dunes, as you know, and they're there. You will definitely, if you may not see the kids, but you will definitely see families that cross our dune to go to the beach. So what we do is kind of draft them on their way down and show them the garden and maybe hand them a bookmark. And your job is to try to round those people up to tell them a little bit about the garden. The garden started in 2010. It was a joint venture between East Beach Company, the developer here, and the city of Norfolk, and the master gardeners, of course. And the objective was to take a sandy area and make it into a beautiful dune garden. Serves the aesthetic purpose as well as environmental, because it'll send down deep roots into the sand and hopefully try to hold the sand in place, which, if you read the newspaper, you know is a constant battle. Number 7. After we work in the garden, you might be able to go to Cova for lunch or have a coffee, or maybe Surf Rider, the new one down here in the harbor, or sit on my porch and have a donut or croissant. You might have a chance explaining the garden to the next class of master gardeners. We take turns doing what we're going to do today, just telling you about the garden. The number 5 reason why it's good to be a Doonie. We might interpret for the East Beach Secret Garden Tour. They have a tour each year, and sometimes they put us on the tour, and sometimes we just get to go. We'll see. Here's somebody you might know, Madam President. The 4th best reason why it's good to be a Doonie is that the heavy lifting has already been done. The initial years, 2010 through 2013, were really tough because new plants in the sand are very, very difficult. And we had a bucket brigade going every day. So Kay's and our cronies in the Doonies have already done the heavy lifting. You're just out there doing continual maintenance. The 3rd reason is that we only meet once a month. We meet on the 4th Tuesday at 9 a.m. Invite you to come. First one will be the 4th Tuesday in April. And this frees all your other time to try other projects. So it's just a great one to fit in. And the second most important reason to be a Doonie is just to enjoy the beautiful flowers. All the things that with luck and enough rain bloom: seaside evening primrose, the spiderwort, batesia, all our favorites, horse mint. This took forever to take, and it's a mint. What do you know about mints? They spread. So once it took off, it took off. So it's kind of like, I prayed and prayed for horse mint because I think it's so beautiful. And it's kind of like, be careful what you ask for. And one more beautiful shot of some of our beneficial wasps and pollinators that love the blackberries. See our bees and wasps. They love the horse mint. But the very most important reason to be a Doonie is the people. Just to enjoy the beautiful people that you get to know through Master Gardeners, as you know. So come and join us, and I'll show you the garden in a little bit. Thank you.
Well, today is one of my favorite days of the Master Gardener intern training class. Why? Because it ties in with something I love, which is the urban ag stuff. So our first topic, as you read from the book, the first subject, nominally anyway, is habitat gardening. But guess what kind of habitat gardening we're going to talk about? Pollinators. Pollinators. And the person who's going to lead that, who's going to talk about that, is our own Kate Melhuish. Kate has been a master gardener since 2004, so she's coming up on 20 years. She's a past president. She pretty much, she runs how many different projects now? I think at least 3 different projects. The outreach, the something at the Hermitage, and something else. I don't even know. I don't even know anymore. She does so much, and of course, the last year and a half, she's been our extension coordinator, extension master gardener coordinator, while we didn't have an agent. So we owe Kate a lot of stuff, and she's also an expert on pollinators. And this will, of course, jive nicely with the second half of the class, which is about native plants. So, Kate Melhuish.
Normally, of course, as a Speakers Bureau person, I would be wearing logo wear when I was doing a talk. However, for today, I am specially attired in my shirt that seems to be, yes, it seems to be shrinking in the dryer for some reason. Okay. Right. So if you read the chapter, I'm sure you all did, it is very, very valuable talking about habitat. And when we do that, we always talk about food and water and shelter and places to raise your young. And then you'll have to hear Deborah another day, not today, talking about habitat for birds, gardening for birds. It's a really fantastic talk. But I'm all about pollinators. 20 years ago, when I started the Master Gardener class, I joined specifically because I wanted to make my lawn weed free. And I do have a love affair with grass. I mostly love pulling it out. And I live on a city lot that is 50 feet wide by 100 feet long, with a house planted in the middle of it, so, and we've lived there for a long time. We bought it right after we got married, and there was a lot of grass, and we were very young. We had no idea what we were doing. So we'd be out there throwing grass seed of any kind out there. Eventually I bought my husband a spreader. However, he has a lot of allergies, and he has maintained for 41 years that he is allergic to grass. So guess who is the person that has to take care of the lawn, really? Cut, mow it, do all that stuff, is me. And so, being a master gardener has been very helpful, but even more, over those years, learning about native plants and learning about habitat has caused me to take out more than half of that yard, like my very own self digging out St. Augustine, after very carefully renovating the lawn to make it all St. Augustine. And that's one corner of my backyard, just one corner. And I particularly took the picture with my phone because I was looking at, you guys in the back won't see this, but there's the hummingbird there. And so not only, well, I raise butterflies, and I have stumbled into raising hummingbirds too, among other things. So when you build a habitat garden, you're starting out small, but every little thing that you do to add to that space invites more and more diversity in the landscape, more and more creatures. So every now and then a box turtle turns up. How it gets there through the fence, I don't know. But okay, so I do want to point out National Pollinator Week, which happens in June. It happens every year, and it's organized by the Pollinator Partnership. And this year it celebrates the tie with agriculture and economics and environmentalism. And you all, maybe, I hope that you all know that 1 in every 3 mouthfuls that you swallow, you get because of pollinators. So it's not just fruits, but chocolate, it's wine. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are that fuel the world's economy, and it's largely because of pollinators. And so I really love this picture. Is anybody a beekeeper in the class? Are you really? How many? Woo, wow. Are you a Norfolk beekeeper or in the Tidewater? Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, they're just adorable. Do you have a mentor from one of the groups, or are you just doing it? Oh, well, okay. Well, I have taken the beekeeping class with Tidewater beekeepers 3 times. Really, really informative. And I would love to have a hive in my tiny little yard, but I have a next door neighbor who's allergic to bees. But I invite all kinds of bees in my yard, and she has to well, never mind. It's another. However, so honeybees are not the only pollinators that we have, but they do a great job. However, we're going to talk about some other things. I do want to point out that in China, in Sichuan province, this is the world's largest region for growing apples, the world's largest. And because of the pesticides that are in that area, that whole region, the whole province, there are no native bees at all, none. And the beekeepers will not bring their bees into the orchards. So they have to send farm laborers up on ladders to use brushes to hand pollinate those apples. So just think about that in the United States, in our farm belt. So I want to talk about the different kinds of pollinators, just kind of give you a brief overview. When, you know, the number one pollinators are what? Bees. Great. Super. Okay. What's the number two pollinator? Well, if you were at the botanical garden, you would say, oh, butterflies. Well, it's not. It's flies. Sad to say, it's flies. So the thing about flies is they don't have the energy requirements, the high energy requirements that bees have. So they don't have to dash from flower to flower to flower to get nectar and pollen. They can bask on plants and just sit there and sort of roll around in the pollen and move it. They can, they are out, they tolerate lower temperatures. So they're out earlier in the year and earlier in the day and later in the evening. So just by virtue of that, they are transferring pollen around. And then that there's a hoverfly right there that really, you can tell, if you remember entomology class, you know it's a fly because it only has 2 wings instead of 4 wings, and they're like airplane wings instead of like folded on their backs, right? Remember that, right? I knew you would. So this one looks like it's one of nature's duplicates. It looks like a honeybee drone, in fact. So it frightens other things away. Those soldier beetles are, well, beetles in general are very primitive mess and soil. That's their title, mess and soil pollinators. And they really pollinate farther south in the tropics, mostly than where we are. But beetles do pollinate the native pawpaw tree, which Chris Schweitzer could tell you more about pawpaws. However, those soldier beetles are wonderful, beneficial insects to have in the yard. They do eat a lot of flower parts, especially daylilies if you have them. But really, you know, beetles are chomping through from plant to plant, and so they're just they're pooping on the plants. But they're dragging pollen along with them as they go. So my favorite, of course, are butterflies and moths, and these are some of the ones that I try to raise. And zebra swallowtail lays its eggs on pawpaw, which I do want to mention that pawpaw is one of the superfruits. It actually, research shows that has anti-cancer properties. So look for those at the plant sale that's coming up. And you'll recognize, I hope, the tiger swallowtail. That is the state insect of Virginia. It's the one on the license plates. And the silver spotted skipper. So that lays its eggs on wisteria, which the non-native wisteria is in full bloom now. And I've seen it on Hampton Boulevard in a couple of places, and it's just overflowing. It is so fantastic. And if you look very closely at it, later in the season, you'll see where those caterpillars the eggs have been on, and the little caterpillars are getting started. Most moths, a lot of moths, do not have mouth parts, so they exist only as part of the food web. They mate, they lay eggs, they are caterpillars for a really long time. And then they, when they're moths, they are around just for, 3 or 4 days, and then a bird eats them. And so something else eats the bird. But hummingbird moths, and there's different ones, including the dreaded hawk moth that lays eggs, and those become the tomato hornworms. Yeah, right. But this one's a clear-winged snowberry moth, and it lays its eggs on coral honeysuckle, on our native honeysuckle. So if you plant it, I can tell you they will come. So, and so hummingbirds, if you have that. Okay, so birds and bats. So we know about hummingbirds here, and the males will be coming to Norfolk, Virginia before the end of April. So hopefully you have some kind of red tubular flower ready to go. And if not, you can put out your feeder. The females come in early May, and then they start their life cycle up here. I'll give you a little bit about hummingbirds. They can live for up to 5 years, and they always come back to where they were born. So if you get them started, if you're able to track them to your yard and keep them coming back, then you will have them. They will come back. And that picture is another absolute cutie. Now, again, bats pollinate a little farther south, and we're in southwest than where we are typically, but bats can eat up to 1,000 mosquitoes in 1 hour. So, and they do visit a lot of plants during the night. They have terrible eyesight. So they've got to be looking, and they have a really intense sense of smell. So what they're looking for is big, white or pale colored flowers, whereas, say, all birds don't have a sense of smell, and they have very keen eyesight. So ruby throats, in particular, their birds do see in the red spectrum. So they're looking for red kinds of flowers, red and orange flowers. So it's kind of, here you go, nature's way of different flowers and colors and shapes being good for the different pollinators, so they're not competing with each other. Okay, and then there's bees, and there are, as you read, there are 4,000 kinds of bees in the United States. I will tell you that on April 17th at Pretlow Library, the night before you guys graduate, one of our master gardeners who is a beekeeper, is doing a talk on bees. And she's just like, in 1 hour, she is going to tell you, encapsulate everything that the homeowner, the home gardener, needs to know about bees, about honeybees, and about all kinds of native bees. And it's very, very interesting. And I hope that if you can carve out that hour, you will come and bring a friend. But lots of bees are generalists, like the bumblebee. And then there's specialist bees that will only go on their particular plant. So the squash bee goes into cucumbers and pumpkins and all kinds of things in that family. And the azalea bee, they're really specialists, and they have fairly brief lives. Okay, so when you're thinking about planting, creating your habitat, you want to think about a lot of these creatures are flying fast around your yard. And butterflies have good eyesight, bees do as well, but they could really miss a flower if you've just got a specimen. So think about planting in the same kind of plant that will fill the size of a hula hoop. And it doesn't have to be round. It can be differently shaped or in a line, but you're trying to cover that amount of space with flower when we think about in drifts. Okay. And then different colors and shapes. So you may remember from entomology that insects see in the ultraviolet spectrum. So they're looking for purple, and on the opposite side of the color wheel, orange or yellow flowers in general. And bees have different lengths of tongue. So they're differently shaped flowers suit them. If you've ever seen that squash bee going in a big squash flower, it is so fun to see and have them come out and they're all just covered with grains of pollen. Just magnificent. Anyway, tubular long red flowers for hummingbirds, and butterflies have those long thin legs that pick up pollen as they walk around on flower heads, either flowers that are like a dinner plate, like daisy shaped, like a Rebecca or black-eyed Susan kind of thing, that they can not spend too much energy, just stay on that flower and put their proboscis in there to get nectar. So those kind of flowers, and also the kind of bunchy flowers like butterfly bush or lantana, so that there's a whole lots of things that they can suck nectar from. And then you want, this is very habitat-ish, you want to span the season. So you need to have something early when those first creatures emerge, all into the fall when everything goes to sleep, when things go dormant. So you're planting with perennials, you're only getting 2 or 3 or maybe 4 weeks of flower from different perennials. So you'll want some of those all the way along, but you'll want to fill in with annuals because you'll be able to stretch things. In general, I would say choose natives. We have had master gardeners who are all native all the time, and that is not me, but you'll see, because some of the things I'm going to tell you about are not natives, but really valuable in a pollinator garden. I want to say too that these 3 pictures were taken by an extension agent in North Carolina at a demonstration garden, and they are all taken from the same spot at different times of the year. Isn't that amazing? So she's a great photographer. So you get the idea. Okay. So this really dramatically shows what you're looking for when you go to the garden center and you're looking for a flower to put in your pollinator garden. Those things that have been bred to be very showy and will often have the fragrance, bred out of them. But a bee is going to have a really hard time. A butterfly is going to will never penetrate into that top of that flower head. Whereas these 3 bees are sleeping in this plant. This is when you start doing this and you come out in the early morning when it's cool and you're finding bees sleeping in your flowers. It's really you feel like, okay, I made it. So having these open single flowering plants is what you're looking for. Okay, so I'm going to start with some of my favorite annuals. And although zinnias are native to Mexico and they're very, very, very popular there, and it's like the native plant, the national plant, zinnias are the number one thing that you need to put in a pollinator garden. They invite everything, and they readily reseed. If they start looking the least little bit like they're spent, pick up the flower head and drop it where it is, and you'll get more flowers from that later in the season. So these are completely fire and forget. They do need to be watered, as what do you know, a lot of plants do, but they come in so many sizes and colors and anything that will suit your garden, and they freely seed. So you can, if you find a packet of seeds, the color that you like, just put them out there and they'll grow. That one in the middle is a devil's trumpet, the Torah that we call one of the moonflowers. I got this from Kay at a plant sale a few years ago, and it keeps coming. It's an annual. It comes back from seed year after year, and it's got a kind of ugly. It's called, one of its common names is thorn apple. It's got a very ugly seed head. Yes, ma'am. Till after frost. Yeah. Mid-April, you can put them out. Yes. Yeah. But the first flower, and you got questions. Oh my gosh. Well, it does. So, when I started out, I wanted nothing but pink flowers in my yard. That was it. Well, so it's not that way anymore. So whatever suits your particular color palette is good. Oh, that's a very good point. Separating zinnia types because you'll get the benefit of seeing the orange ones here and the multicolored taller ones over here. And I feel that way too about certain other plants like Monarda. I'm looking at Chris Schweitzer. We've had this discussion about, never mind. Anyway, okay, so Penta is another one that is a tropical. However, it is a total butterfly magnet. If you are not going to water this, forget about it. But if you do, they will get very tall and get very showy. They do need to be deadheaded, but you'll notice when they need to be deadheaded. They come in all kinds of pale pink to more purple than that. Yes, Michelle? Yeah. Do you have full sun? Yeah. A big pot. And I would put a vine in the middle of that pot and let it grow up something. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, do. Okay, so none of these are natives. All right. Moving on. And then there's marigolds, which is also a Mexican plant. However, marigolds are something that if there are nematodes in the soil, they will draw them away from, if you plant them near vegetables, they'll draw them away from or suppress them from where the vegetable roots are. And they also attract lots of beneficial insects. So this is a really good thing to have. I personally don't like the smell of them, but the other creatures do. So, oh, right. Frequently when you buy those little packages, multi-packs of annuals, you check the labels on them because sometimes the labels will say that they've been treated with nicotinoids. And if you, again, in your book, it talked about this. This is a neuro bad thing. And and what happens is the bees ingest this from it's a drench that's put on these plants, and then it's absorbed by the plant and it's in the plant for keeps. So when a bee gets pollen from this or butterfly nectars from it, it starts to shake, and then it shuts down, and then it dies. And so it's pretty nasty thing. I think it is required. And researchers have pointed this out for several years now. And so I think that big box retailers are getting from growers who are, something about when you go to Lowe's or something, they're buying 10,000 plants from a grower, usually in Canada or someplace, that is growing hundreds of thousands of plants. And so to keep those plants healthy, they have to treat them with something. They feel like they have to treat them with something. So that's one of the things that they treat them with. And then that's a danger of if you're not paying attention to the labels on them. And so really, as master gardeners, we suggest that you go to nurseries where you can ask where they're getting their plants from and whether they've been treated. And so there, I don't know. That's a good research thing for me to do. It's certainly it remains in the plant itself, but yeah. When a perennial is treated, it stays in the plant for many years. I do like biennials too, and this is kind of I hope this isn't duplicating what Cindy talked about with your herbaceous plants chapter, but I don't think that she talked about rose campion, which is actually, it is not a native. It originated in the south of Europe, but it has been grown for 2,000 years everywhere. So it is a worldwide plant, and it is a wonderful old-fashioned pass-along plant. And it reseeds like a champion. And that's what it looks like the first year. And the second year, it goes into flower. And while you may not see a lot of bees on these plants, on the flower heads, the stems are very hairy. And there are a number of bees that strip those plant fibers off and use them to line their nests underground. So this is another example of something that you can put in that will add to your habitat. Oh, the other thing is that I should mention, where I live, it floods a lot. And so rose campion is one of those things that is not tolerant of any kind of brackish water inundation. So it'll kill the starts, but it doesn't have any effect on the seeds. So I always have plenty of rose campion. And parsley. Parsley is the gateway drug for would-be butterfly people. This is, if you go out there and put in a pot of parsley outside your kitchen door, you will see later in the season, I can't use this as a, no, it doesn't do that. You'll see later in the season a black butterfly hovering around the parsley. And if you watch her, you'll see her ovipositor come out and have her plant eggs on the parsley. And then a couple weeks later, you'll say, oh, it's full of parsley worms. And a couple of weeks after that, you'll be raising your own butterflies. So this is a great one. It does bolt the second year, and I've found that butterflies don't really have a taste for it the second year, but it's like a last resort. I'll save my organic parsley stuff for when we do a butterfly talk sometime. All right, so here's another one, and this is from China. However, bees love this, hummingbirds love this. That's my miniature hollyhock, and I would not be without it. So just, I want to say, use your own judgment, and don't feel like you're limited at all. Just be aware of what you're planting and why you want it in your yard. Okay, so native plants. All of these are natives, and all of them are something that they're not in my yard. They're in my next door neighbor's yard, the one that has the bee allergy. I do get the occasional dandelion, and I'm perfectly happy for that, because that is one of the early nectar pollen plants for those early bees and honeybees. If in the wintertime, in January, February, when it's a really warm day and a honeybee comes out, and dandelions are some of the only things that they can find. So I don't mind that, but I would take it out before it goes to seed. Chickweed and henbit are hard to defeat. However, when I get it, I just pull it out by hand. And all of these are edible, and all of these have more nutritional value than spinach. So don't think that they're so dreadful. Yes. These are good. Yes. Any place. Yeah. Right. So just don't freak out if you have this. Okay. Catmint is one of my favorite perennials in the summertime. It's not catnip. Bees totally love this. If you happen to have a cat too, the cat will go out and lie in it. It won't go nuts in it, but it'll just lie in it and be very happy there. But it is very fragrant. It will fade. It has many weeks of flowers, and then in July it will look spent. So if you cut it to the ground, it will reflower. This is an amazing plant, and you'll get a second flush of the flowers. So yes. I don't think it spreads much. Mine did. Joey, you're nodding your head. I don't think it spreads much. Mine doesn't. Yeah. I wish it would. I really do enjoy the fragrance of this. Here's a native golden Alexander, or sometimes called Zizia, properly called Zizia. And this is another host plant for black swallowtail. And bees really like the flower heads. It will flower all summer long. It's a perennial that has a really long flower. And some of those dinner plate kinds of plants, black-eyed Susans and purple coneflower, they look very similar, don't they? One's Rudbeckia and one's Echinacea, completely different families. They are great seeders when they so they'll come back year after year. When the petals fade from them and fall off, it happens right at the time of year that the goldfinches are raising their young. And so goldfinches are probably one of the few herbivore birds. They don't eat insects, so they feed their young the seeds from these plants. And then there's mint, and you can see that it's kind of got the same multi-flower head that butterflies would like too, as well as bees. And you know that mint is a big spreader, and you should keep that corralled in a pot, right? But grow a lot of it, nevertheless. This is another great one. This is also in the mint family. Mint, did Cindy say you can tell that things are mint? They have a square stem. Okay, great. This sometimes called Agastache. This comes in way different sizes and different colors, and this is another no miss plant. You totally want this in your yard, and it's really fun to see bees climb up and down the flower head. Plant this close to a window. It's also called hummingbird mint. That giant has. Okay, so bee balm is named because it was thought that if you got stung by a bee, you could rub it on and it would be a balm. But actually, that might be true. I don't know. But it is every pollinating creature loves bee balm. Not only bees, not only butterflies, hummingbirds love it. It too goes to seed, and it has it's very inviting for the goldfinches. There's a clear-winged snowberry moth nectaring on it. There's the horse mint that Gail talked about, which is a kind of Monarda. Monarda comes in different sizes and flower colors, and this is one that I would really suggest having a different kind in different places. And it only flowers for a couple weeks, but if you're using different varieties, you can stretch the season to 6 or more weeks with this. It makes a fantastic show, and it does spread slowly, but not crazily. Like if you had mountain mint, that would. Have you ever planted mountain mint? Well, that's like mountain mint is the #1 thing to plant for the most variety of bees. And if you put it in a pot somewhere, you could watch it. If you put it in the ground, like at Barb's house, it will take over. But it's a really good one. Okay. And milkweed, what lays its eggs on milkweed? Raise your hand if you know. Yes, monarch butterflies. So, okay, you'll graduate from black swallowtails right straight to monarchs. And so if you have a wet area in your garden, swamp milkweed is a good one, a good choice. It gets to be about that tall and it has that pink flower. There's another variety that's called ice ballet that's got a white flower, just in case your color palette is different. And then butterfly weed is only gets to be about a foot tall. And I love this orange flower. And I will say that butterflies, monarchs, well, all butterflies like this, but monarchs really like those slender, long leaves. I find them really tasty. They're tender. And butterfly weed takes a drier area. You would not want to let that get its feet wet. If you have enough space, you could plant common milkweed. I planted 3, and now I have 300. And my neighbors on both sides, including the allergic lady, have some too. But they all like butterflies. So, and the neighbor on this side has chickens. So she likes all kinds of insects in her yards to feed the chickens. So it works out really, really well, except that it's kind of shocking. It grows fast when it breaks dormancy in late May, and it grows in my yard to about 5 feet tall. And last year, the bunnies loved it. The bunnies came in and they ate the leaves up to like knee high. And it's supposed to be toxic, but didn't seem to bother them. Yes. Aphids. Oh, well, usually aphids can land on that. Yeah, Deborah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, the other thing is that you can invite things to the yard that like to eat aphids. Ladybugs. There are a number of things that will eat aphids. So I have a lot of milkweed. I do have some aphids on it. I do have some milkweed bugs on it. I do have a lot of caterpillars on it. They all seem to coexist, and which is good. And right here is the tropical milkweed that you may see, and it has a beautiful flaming flower. It's very, very attractive. And then it's got those tender leaves. The common milkweed has tougher, bigger leaves. And so it's kind of, I wouldn't say that's the last choice, but it happens to be mostly what I have in the yard. So the butterflies have to live with it. But this stuff, the tropical, it will continue to flower and into December, until the frost kills it. And there's some, I won't say there's some debate about if that those flowers are keeping butterflies around to continue nectaring and laying eggs on it until it's way too late for them to make the trip to Mexico. So I don't think that research is fully behind that, but that is a pretty strong theory. So in either case, I would say use this only if you Like at the botanical garden, they grow it because it's showy and it comes back fast, and they need to have it on display all the time in the butterfly house. But for us at home, we probably don't need to do that. So, here's another summer plant that gets really tall at my house. So it's the only time I get tiger swallowtails, which I would really, really love, is when the Joe Pye is in bloom. And it is very attractive to bees as well. It's very showy. This is actually it's supposed to be the dwarf variety. Yeah, it's not. And it does spread by seed, and so it is, I wouldn't say aggressive, but it's assertive. It does. So you can give some away. Ageratum is a total bee magnet, and everything loves ageratum. It does spread too, but I think nicely, and it is so pretty. It's called foam flower as well as, is that foam flower? No, okay, just mist flower. Okay, and there you see, well, you might in the back not see them, but the two soldier beetles mating. It's very cushiony, very inviting, I guess. There are all kinds of asters in all kinds of colors, and this really helps to extend the season with native plants. So definitely add some asters. You'll see the yellow sulfur and the fritillary, and okay. So Mexican sage is not a native, but I have to point it out because it's so amazing. There's asters. These are both at the Hermitage in the corner that's looking out over the river. And you will not see this Mexican sage now. It is astonishing the way it comes back really fast in August. It starts growing, putting out nice, fairly woody foliage. And then boom, it blows up like that. In the right spot. It's just an amazing plant with those stems of real long stems of purple flowers that it's really, really a beautiful plant. Then it dies back when it gets frost and it sticks, but so much for perennials. Okay. Besides, if you only could put in 2 plants for pollinators, your 2 choices would be mountain mint and goldenrod, both of which spread a lot. So, but this one is very tall. It's great for the back of the garden. Well, actually, there's lots of different varieties of this, and some don't spread as much as others. But for 3 weeks in September and early October, it's just covered with every imaginable native bee on it. And there's a little gray hair streak that, you know what it is. What is it? What's its host plant? Clover. So if you have clover in your lawn, leave it and you'll get these. See how everything works together? You could really have a habitat garden before you know it. I also want to say that goldenrod, this is one that it's in front of my front porch. It looks terrible right now if you've dropped off anything for the green elephant sale. But when it's in bloom in the morning, this is one of the plants that the bees are sleeping on. So big bumblebees are sleeping on it. It's really fun to see. All right, so vines. This one is passion flower, and this one is the craziest looking flower. It is a native plant, a perennial. It comes back. It's got these big, gorgeous flowers. Butterflies like it. Bees like it. There's usually 2 or 3 bees on every flower. The Gulf fritillaries lay their eggs on it. If it's pollinated enough, it gets passion fruit. You see that one in the corner that's like a great big grape that's filled with seeds. It's hard to tell when it's ripe, but it is a terrific plant. And again, Chris can tell you more about it and probably share some with you. Here's another vine, the Carolina jessamine. And usually you see the big yellow, showy, trumpety. They're not big like trumpet flowers, but usually you see that bright colored one. Mine is a smaller Woodlander's pale yellow. And the hummingbirds like to visit the feeder and then just sit on the vine and look around and watch bees go in there and then fly somewhere else. So it's been very entertaining to watch. They both need support, some kind of trellis, and they both have a strychnine related compound in the nectar. And so they're somewhat toxic. And if honeybees, you know how honeybees, well, you may not know this, but you will. Honeybees only like to visit one kind of flower at a time. So they are not going to this and then to passion flower and then to a dandelion and so on. If you got close enough to their pollen baskets, you would see that they're all one color. They're not striped. They're not, because coming from different kinds of plant pollen. So if honeybees, and they'll fly over other nectar sources to go back to their flower of choice. But so if they find this, and this is what they're totally gathering pollen from to bring it back to the hive, that can be somewhat toxic to them. So this is one of the reasons that a hive in my yard would not be ideal. I just want to point that out but it's a beautiful plant, and it does attract a lot of pollinators, and it is not going to kill them. Okay, so one of a master gardener several years ago was doing her project, and it was to the class, and it was about growing your own loofah vine, and she gave us all seeds, and so I planted it, and it's in the squash family. And so it's my side door, and it's got these great big, gorgeous squash kind of flowers that I absolutely love. And then I made that's not mine, but I did grow a couple of them and made loofahs out of them. And but you could eat them; they're edible if they're young enough. And also, it attracted another beneficial insect. See that? And that's a native mantid. That's not a Chinese mantid. So that was a really good thing. When people talk about, oh, I love butterflies, I put in a butterfly bush and I'm done. That really is like, it is a magnet for butterflies, but it is invasive, and people in the Butterfly Society and we as master gardeners should really be pointing people in a different direction from that. It's got those nice bottle brush flowers that butterfly can nectar on easily, but so does Virginia sweetspire. And it doesn't grow as tall maybe as a butterfly bush, but it's nice and full. And then in the fall, when the flowers fade, it's beautiful foliage. So it's got 3-season interest. And there's a red admiral. That's one of my favorites, nectaring on it. This is one that I have in my yard, button bush. And if you've got a wet place, this is good near a rain garden, say. It's multi-stemmed. It's these big, buttony, hairy kinds of flowers that butterflies like as well as bees. And then it's got this kind of funky seed pod, not quite that, I guess the perspective is a little bit different. It's smaller than that flower head, but that's really a very good fruit source for critters in your garden. And if we were talking about trees, one of my favorites is the tulip poplar, which that is a tulip poplar. But wait, hold that thought. And so it's the host plant for eastern swallowtails. I mean, tiger swallowtails. And I just love their caterpillars. Totally crazy about them. My brother lives in Northern Virginia and has a property that's 5 acres, and it's mostly tulip poplars. So a little more than 10 years ago, I was there and I stole a seedling that was this big and put it in a pot. And so it's still in a pot outside my kitchen door. And it is the world's largest bonsai. It's about 8 feet tall in this big pot, and it's going to stay there. And this is supposed to be a 70-foot tree, but it is just got to deal with it. And it's right at the kitchen door, so that when the butterflies come and they lay the eggs, I can watch them. But another, if you don't have room for a tulip poplar, and I don't have room to put it in the ground, is a sweet bay magnolia. So this, maybe that's what you think of. This one is another host plant for tiger swallowtails, and it has multi trunks, and it too likes some water. It will take some flooding, and then the flower is very much like a magnolia grandifolia, but not as big, and the leaves are not so leathery. It's semi evergreen. Here it's mostly evergreen, and then it's got these fabulous seeds later in the season. So birds like this as well as bees. Okay, so another master gardener did her project on permaculture, and then immediately went out and got her yard registered as a wildlife habitat. And there are a number of master gardeners who have done that. Donna Van Kuren, her house, man, her yard is amazing and a beautiful habitat. Okay, but what I want to talk to you now about is, you know Doug Tallamy. We've talked about Doug Tallamy, and maybe you've seen some of his videos or looked at his books, read his books, please. A couple of years ago, he and a woman who was in the nonprofit business started this homegrown national park. And the idea behind this is that there are 40 million acres of grass in people's yards in the United States. And that's way too much. And so, and because grass is not doing anything for anybody or any critters, maybe woolly bear caterpillars. But if the idea behind this is to reclaim from people's lawns, half of that, to get 20 million acres planted with native plants. And for individuals, for people who live in their little patch, to register on the map and to get their house listed. And every time you put in a native plant, you could go on and say what you put in. Say that you put in a sweet bay magnolia, or say that you put in a buttonbush or something smaller. But it's got to be a native plant. And then you estimate the size, the square foot, how much square foot that plant is going to be on the ground. And all of this adds up. And so right now, they're at almost 100,000 acres, which isn't a heck of a lot towards 20 million acres, but it's a start. And so I looked over the weekend to see where in Norfolk people are on the map, and there's my little red dot there. But these are the other spots. And so we have 25 of you, 20, okay, that could add to this and maybe get some more acreage listed on here. So at the break, you're going to get a native plant book and a decal and the brochure to let you join Homegrown National Park. And some great resources, including all of Doug Tallamy's books. Again, from the Hermitage will be on a non-native Solomon seal bed, but it's native bee. There you go. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes, ma'am. The heart-shaped leaf vine. Oh, so that is actually in my neighbor with the chickens yard. And you gotta make use of the space that you have and add height to it. So he makes beer. So he's got this 12-foot thing added to the fence, 12 foot long and 12 foot high, and it's strung with hops plants, which is the host plant for red admirals. So it works out really well. Yeah. Any other questions? Tulip poplar. Oh, the flowers are pretty nondescript on it, but it's the host plant for for tiger swallowtail butterflies. So excellent. No, do you get the big yellow?
You said they get to be 70 feet?
Yeah.
No, they're 100 to 120 feet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 Right. So
They're huge trees, and they're also, as beautiful as they are, they're not known for they're not a structural, they're not a strong tree for storms.
yeah, right. So mine's staying in the pot, which corralled. It's not big enough. Yeah, it needs an upgrade. Right. Any other questions? Anybody else? Well, thank you.
Susan has an announcement before we break.
I'm holding the sign-up sheet for your presentations. 7 of you have not yet signed up. So if you don't sign up, we will just call on you randomly whenever we want you to do your presentation. The other thing I wanted to say, these all have a time beside them. Those times are approximate because I put them in 15-minute increments and none of you are going to be speaking more than 10 minutes. So this is just for the order. Okay. So if you are one of the 7, please come up here during the break and sign up.
All right, let's take a 15-minute break and then we'll regroup. Our next speaker is Debora Mosher. Debora is from the class of 2008, I think. So she's been a Master Gardener 15 years. She leads up the Wyandotte team and the Ernie Morgan Center Eco Garden team. She does a ton of stuff. She's also a past president, and she serves on a number of boards around town, including the Environmental Commission at one point, I think, and also FONE, Friends of Norfolk Environment. So she's another one like Kate who does a whole lot for us. So let's welcome Debora Mosher.
I will say before we get started, after this fabulous presentation, if any of you want to be on the email that she sends out every 2 weeks, just let me know after class and I've got the whole box, so I haven't emailed, but let me know if you want to be on the email. So there's no spot on for the Wyandotte project. The Wyandotte project.
Okay, the purple Ballymoo. Oh, boy, this is loud. Is it too loud for you? I think what happens, it bounces back to me. I can hear myself talking and I can hear that, and it's really loud in my ears. Okay, I'm going to not even introduce this yet. I'm going to make some remarks. Within the last 50 years, we have lost 3 billion birds, native birds. 3 billion in 50 years. You will be a part of the organization that's going to try to stop that. They're very important and they die in many, many ways, and I'm not going to go through that. So 1 in 4 birds that normally were here is gone. And I don't know which bird species has the worst problem. But I've noticed throughout my life when I owned a home the bird population with the last couple of years has really decreased. So we need to work on this. And that's one reason why we have an eco garden, right? I mean, eco garden and wine oak. This is wine oak. I'm just all confused. Okay, this is a purple gallinule. That's a bird. And a friend of mine, by the Taylors, all of a sudden, Mr. Taylor came running into Joan Taylor and said, there's a purple chicken in the backyard. So she runs out. Oh, for God's sake, don't you realize that's a purple gallinule? They are a tropical bird, but every once in a while they come up here, so the word is out and all the birders love to go and see it. So what happened is that she and her husband got together and they knew the chair of Norfolk Western, changed his name to Norfolk Southern. And they went over there because they lived quite close and they said, you have a lot of land around here. It's off Hampton Boulevard. Wouldn't you like to have that as a preserve? So they talked about it. 8 acres of land was given to the Audubon Society. So that's what this is. Wyanoke Bird and Flower Water Sanctuary, Cape Henry Audubon Society. And maybe one of these days we will have maintained by Norfolk gardeners. They're looking towards them. You walk in the garden gate. It's only open on the weekends. We don't allow a lot of people during the week because it is a sanctuary rather than a garden for people. It's a garden for everything else but people. And as you walk in, we do have a shed. We have to, so we have tools there. There's a little part of the shed when the little children come and we talk to them about what's in the wine oak, and they have games there. This is what it would normally look like. It would be semi-shade, lots of leaves, dead trees, right? He's had a couple of dead trees that he had to cut down. This is the wild meadow that we work in. This was the one garden when I joined Norfolk Master Gardeners that we maintained. We only maintained 2 gardens, this one and what we call the this is what the garden looks like in August. It's very wild. Now, Kay showed you very beautiful pictures of flowers, and a lot of them are from the Orient, but we like it wild. So we have ironweed, goldenrod. Of course, these are fantastic pollinators. That's in the meadow. Of course, we have the common milkweed, and I will warn you again, if you have the land and you want to plant that, that's fine. But if you don't, it spreads by underground roots. You will have a plant here. Next summer, you're going to have another one all the way in between. It's very aggressive, but you can use the other milkweed plants to use for the butterflies. These are Audubon members, and they have a summer picnic there every year. These are some of the people that come out to watch on the 3rd Saturday at 8 o'clock in the morning. They go birding. Master gardeners are always in there because we're the only ones that maintain this. We talk to people. We have other groups that will come in and work with us. I don't know if you know anything about the Elizabeth River Trail, but it's along the north side of Wyanoke, sort of the north and the west. And that's the end. It's not really, because we are there on Mondays. Yesterday we were there. On Wednesday. We were Eco Garden yesterday. I haven't.
Second and 4th Wednesdays is when we're at Wyandotte.
Usually at 8 o'clock. Lately, we've been meeting at 9 o'clock, but the weather looks like it's going to have very warm temperatures. So it's better at 8 o'clock. You can work for 2 hours. If you want to work for 3 hours, you are an angel. Thank you. Okay, we will go into the Wyanoke.
So there's always stuff to do there. I know there's some projects now that are kind of overwhelmed with the help when new classes come in. We will not be overwhelmed. We might lose you back in the forest, but we'll find you before we lock back up.
And that's true. This is what you have in front of you. And I cannot praise this enough to tell you. And why is that? First of all, it's from Hampton Roads region, Southeast Virginia. And these are the plants that will grow here. These are all native plants. And why it's so good is because it has light requirement, soil moisture, wildlife support by the plant. They only do it in little images. It's to the point. You can get directly there. You can understand. So it's excellent to use if you're going to be planting anything in the future. Okay, I'm going to ask the class, why would you plant native plants? And I'm not going to tell you. You have to tell me. Yeah.
It's good for the ecosystem
Why?
because it allows for a large number of biodiversity to live and thrive.
Did you hear her? Biodiversity? Oh, she read it out of the. I'm sorry. Who else is going to take that? Why do we have native plants? Why do we call them native?
Because they're from here.
Here, they're from here. Remember, this is thousands and thousands of years that these plants have developed without human intervention. We have them because they take less moisture. They're conditioned to the land that they live in. They require less pruning, less whatever maintenance, if you want to say. And the idea is that they're a part of the ecosystem in that they are a food source for I don't know how many insects, people, animals, small and large. So that's why native plants are important. And I may also put one more thing in. They actually are conditioned to our weather patterns. So they can handle it where some of our other ones cannot. I want to see if I missed a point here. Oh, they don't need to use pesticides. I should have known that first. And they don't need to be fertilized. Now, now your garden, they may, because the Wyanoke soil is fantastic. When you go over there isn't any clay. It is humus and sand. Coastal plain. So they are a condition to live there. And there are many of them live in your own gardens. Okay. Well, I sort of went through that, the benefits of native plants. I'm not going to speak about these three, and I really would have liked to. The one, the ilex, is the one that is over at Norfolk Botanical Garden, and look at those seeds. Just look at those seeds. Birds may fly in there and actually devour all of them. The first one I want to talk about is the blue-eyed grass. And this is not a grass. It is related to iris, because if you dig down deep, it's a little bulb. Notice they call it grass because it's similar to grass with the stalks. It's only about 12 to 15 inches high. But look at that flower. It's very small. It's an early bloomer, April, maybe into May, not too much. But the colorations are very important. And I think that Kate went over it with that. The blue on the outside, I don't know the ultraviolet that's in there. And that inviting yellow side inside tells the insects and anything else, this is great. I have something for you. It's easy to grow. It's low, has low maintenance. You don't have to prune it. And maybe this could substitute that lirotopy that we have. That's sort of ugly. Now I got it. I think that they have improved its conditions. I don't know. And it's very stiff now. Before they were kind of flip-floppy and didn't survive. And we do have that in Wyanoke. You saw the blue mist flower, the hardy ageratum. Kate showed that to you with those little puffy things. Insects like that. Again, it's an attraction. This plant, some people do not like. I do because it has a tendency to be very floppy. So that's kind of wild. It just flops on the ground. It doesn't, you can't put it up straight. It's not erect. But it also grows by underground roots, rhizomes. and it has seeds, so it doubles the effect of growing a new plant. The other thing is this plant is, August and September and maybe into November. It's a fall plant. The blue-eyed grass is a spring plant. This is a fall plant. So you start having color. And I think Kate also said that that's very important. Let me see anything else about that. RDH rated. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is one of my most favorite flowers. It's the Aquilegia canadensis. Why is canadensis after that name? Aquilegia. So it's a native. Anytime you go and you see that word in North America, that's a native plant. This one is a gorgeous one. It's all over Roanoke right now. And also at the Eco Garden. Look at that flower. It looks like an upside down little bell. Those yellow stamens come out. Those pink and red petals and sepals coming up. At the tip of those sepals, that's where they have the nectar. Bees cannot get into this. Maybe your small insects can. So the hummingbirds, the moths, or the butterflies are able to get into that. Now, this plant is very easy. If you get one, you can propagate it very easily by not cutting it. As it grows to the fall, you will see the seeds are being formed. And you just take that plant. Do that even in your own garden. It sounds weird. And the seeds scatter all over. So you get more plants. And Eco Garden is one that we have lots and lots. We only planted 2 plants. And now I think we have, I don't know how many. They're small. This one is large. It cannot tolerate heat and high temperatures. And in Roanoke, so be careful where you plant it. Shade, semi-shade, almost 2 words, shady shade. So it's a natural plant in everyone's garden. This is the southern blue flag. Iris virginica. So where would we find this plant? Virginia, of course. Notice the fronds. They are not those stiff things that we see with our other irises. They're floppy. And it doesn't take away from its beauty. Again, blue. You don't see many blue plants, and that's why I put these in here. It's blue and that white and the yellow and the white are saying, on the platform, come on, you can come and visit me. And that's the way nature has developed these plants. This is called, on this side, we saw what we call creeping phlox. What's on the other side, it's a pink, and that's a rhododendron. If you have trouble, I'm sorry, I did the up button. I have to pay her $10 every time I do that. Okay, down. Okay, phlox diarcata. Our phlox in Roanoke are not quite that purple. They are more of a light blue. Mass of them. I went one time I went there, and then the mass, I mean, it could be a mass of this size of these tables. It's a fantastic ground covering. And it lives in pure shade. So if you have a place where you want to really have something to grow, just as a ground covering, because it gets very tight, this is the plant. Now, what we do in Roanoke is that we transplant. We have a little patch that we let it grow, and that's what we use to take this wonderful plant and plant it in other areas. And that's how we try to keep down the cost of buying a lot of flowers. This is a very good one. And what you have to do is you sort of ruffle the roots. It grows by underground roots, and go over to an area and ruffle that soil there. Pack it down, and of course, water it. We have never had our transplants die. Let me see what else. I'm trying to think of everything else I can.
Did you change the color of that? Like you changed?
No, unfortunately,
Is one plant purple and another plant pink, or you?
no, ours are light blue, but this is a purple pink. Ours is, well, I'll go back. Very blue. Now, I don't know why that is. Unless the ones that they have that I took a picture of, it's a cultivar, I don't know. Very blue, and it's about this high. It gets about 10 inches high. Now, this is with the creeping phlox. This is our native rhododendron, native wild azalea. First thing that I notice, it's deciduous. It loses its leaves. It's not like the japonica that we got all over the area, which are absolutely gorgeous. I will never put them down. They're beautiful. But this one is that big flower. Look at those arms, white. And then it has this wonderful pink road. So your butterflies and your moths will actually come to this. Now, it's supposed to have a slight scent. I'll have to go and see. That's something we need to do, is go over there, because it's blooming now in Wine Oak. Just go over there and find the scent, because I haven't been able to much. Let me see. It can be pruned. It will get 12 feet high. It can also be propagated by the underground branch if you put it underneath there and then put soil over it. It's just one of our plants that we dearly love. Now, the next 3 slides are going to be about ferns. And a lot of people say, oh, they're too difficult to grow. They're not. They're not really. And a lot of the books that I've looked at said we need more ferns in our garden, because we have a tendency to either to neglect them or just say it will be too much, unmanageable. This 7 lady fern, which has a lot of lead in it on the stem, is easy to grow. Notice that the fronds there are kind of lacy. They're not strong and stiff. So you would never put that plant in a place where you're going to get a lot of wind, because it will just thrash around and, of course, sort of rip those things apart. It does grow in wet soil, but it also tolerates dry soil. And I have, in my previous home, I had it in front yard. It would get 4 hours of afternoon sun and be perfectly fine. If it did not, I would just give it a little squirt of water and it is fine. Now, all of these ferns I'm going to show you, they're in clumps like this, and they come out. And you can look down in these clumps and you know that's the major plant or the mother plant or the father plant, whatever. That's how you can transplant more ferns in your yards. It's very easy, and they do take hold, because we have Christmas fern that we plant all over the place, and wine. We haven't done much of this. Now, the big thing I wanted to show you is on that right-hand slide. If you turn the fern leaf over, you will see these brown sporangia, and inside it are spores. This is how this plant spreads the spores, and another plant will come from it. Now, I haven't seen anything in Wyandotte particularly, but then a couple of years ago, I noticed this very bare spot. Lo and behold, a fern. And it was very small, and it just started growing. So it does use spores rather than seeds. This is also a way you can identify the fern. Now, this is a different fern. It's called the cinnamon fern, and you can see why it is, because of the brown sporangium. These plants are much different than the previous one. Very stiff. Their fronds are very stiff, and they're almost what we call vase shape. The sporangia that you see growing there all develop by fiddleheads, and they slowly release themselves and then grow, and they're beautiful. It just has a wonderful style. This plant is excellent in semi-shade, but in shade, pure shade, that's where ours grow. It doesn't need that much sun. Again, this can grow by underground roots, rhizomes, I'm sorry, but you can transplant every one of these. You have to have a nice sharp knife or sharp shovel, make sure that it's clean, and you look at each of those little plants, and you just dig down and pick that one up and move it to another place. You should have the other place ready to be put in, less damage to your roots by drying out. This does need a little bit more water than the lady. What was the last one? It's him. He hit me in the head the other day. No, he's my favorite man. Excuse me. So the next one, look at that. It's called a royal fern, and I wanted to find out where it was. I did not even do my research. I said, oh, the Norfolk Botanical Garden has it. I'm going over there to their nature trail. So I went walking down the nature trail, could not find it because I thought it was a fern. Does that look like a fern? No. It's one that has dimorphic, has the stem, and then the other little stems come off on this pinnate leaves. This one, again, has the sporangia that comes up. So I felt so good. Now, this fern does need a lot of water as opposed to the other two. And that's why it grows right next to Lake Whitehurst, usually in their bogs. But it's a beautiful plant. It takes shade to semi-shade. I would never put it in direct sun for many, many hours. And the other thing is, this fern is found on every continent in the world except for Australia. Now, I'm putting that on your final test. And you're going to have to figure out why Australia does not have it. I'm not even going to say, talk amongst yourselves. It's not going to be put on the test. They wouldn't let me do that. Okay. Now, you already have this swamp milkweed, but I'm going to do it in a different angle. It's gorgeous. It feeds insects, butterflies, and other things, yes. But it's very important to understand about co-evolution. Thousands and thousands of years ago, and I don't know how this happened, the swamp milkweed, all milkweeds have a sap, a white sap that's poisonous. Don't ever lick your fingers after you've touched it. Well, it's not going to really harm you, but it's not good. Somehow, did a butterfly go there and have the nectar and get that, into her body and then put it over there on that leaf? The little egg, which developed into a caterpillar? I don't know how that happened. Somewhere way back there, either the poison wasn't bad. I don't know how that happened. That's something that nature surprises us with. And then birds, they eat all the stems and the leaves. Birds recognize this. It's another coevolution. How did the birds, when they would eat that, die, tell their babies, don't eat that caterpillar? But they don't. It's amazing what nature has for us. And then if you have a seed pod like that and you want to try to grow milkweed, go ahead. It's kind of difficult. But with me, if it's there, I take it out and I blow it and make it move all over. This one, she already went through Virginia sweet spire. I'm going to tell you something more about its physical conditions and where you would grow it. It's a 3-season plant because it's coming up now, and it has beautiful light green leaves that come up. And then in the summertime, they have these spirals. They are sweet. I think a lot of insects are attracted to it. It's a very durable plant. This plant we have at the Ernie Morgan Center on either side of the door, direct sunlight for, I say, 6 hours, and it's still growing. Now, the problem with this is that it can get quite high. So they now have what they call Little Henry, and you would go, it's a cultivar, but it has all the aspects and the characteristics of a native plant. Somehow, the scientist or whoever does it has tweaked something and has created one that's much smaller. So then you get this fall, and she had a gorgeous picture of the fall leaves. It is deciduous. They drop their leaves. And you can see the spiral arches of their stems. It can take dry conditions. It does like wet conditions, so it's a very versatile plant. She didn't catch me on this one. We sort of coordinate. I never seen yellow wild indigo baptisia until I came here to Virginia, and I didn't ever recognize it. It again has this vase-like plant with a little curvature. It gets very thick because as it continues to grow year after year, you get these, you call them suckers, but they're really branching off the roots. So these plants can get larger and larger. Now, this is one plant that the Indians use to get their yellow color, of course. And then when they develop their seeds, over on the right-hand side, a very leathery casing. And then if you go over and move it, there's black seeds in there and it shakes. And so they used to call this the rattlesnake plant. So you know about this. This is wonderful. It does take dry conditions. So we have it, of course, right in the middle of the meadow, which can get very dry. We do very little hand watering over there. It's almost impossible. Again, you can propagate this, but if you do, and you're going to put in more than one plant, make sure they're at least 3 feet apart because it will continue to grow. Coastal Joe Pye weed. Fantastic. Look at that swallowtail. The ones I have are the big ones. And you can get Little Joe. That's a cultivar. Little Joe, Little Henry, Little Joe. This is Little Joe. It's easy. Eutrochium dubium. Because it likes to sit there on that flower, that mop head, and sit there, and he doesn't have to worry. She told you about it. It just doesn't take that much energy as to flit over to this flower, to flit over to this. That takes a lot of energy. This one you can just sit with. And this is the one that I could go and actually take a picture of. It was very simple. Let me see. It's quite high. This one is quite high. Let me think. Sun to semi-shade is fine. And it does grow by underground roots. As she said, it can be somewhat aggressive. It was not in my garden. It continued to grow, but that was over years. Goldenrod, fantastic. This one we would recommend that you see right up there is called Fireworks. It's low with arching. The goldenrod that we have in Wyandotte is straighter and taller and taller and taller. And then it also goes this way. It's just like the common milkweed. You go in there and we have to remove it because it's in the forest. Or we have to move it because it's not supposed to be there. But it's a fantastic for insects. This you must have, listen to this, is amazing. 6 to 8 hours of sun. It can be in semi-shade as long as you have 2 to 6 hours. So put that in the hottest, brightest place that you have in your garden. And as Kate said, hers is covered with bees or insects. Okay, let's see. Fireworks, that's what you need. It does take drought or dry, and the heat doesn't bother it. Now this is called the beautyberry, Calicarpa americana. This is a gorgeous shrub. They're sort of arching. They flower in the summertime and they start coming out in August and September. This is also a plant that the birds can use and as they fly. But what is so gorgeous about this is in the fall, it gets these bright yellow leaves. So you have that contrast of the two colors. One day I looked out in my backyard and I saw a flock of robins and they stayed there for about 2 to 3 hours. They just would fly in there, eat some, fly out. So their buddy could fly in, eat some and fly out. So it was fantastic. When I got this, Gil Gillespie said, Deborah, you know what this plant is? I said, yes, of course, it's butterfly plant. It's gorgeous. I mean, beautyberry plant. Yeah, it's gorgeous. He said, what you need to do and take this, because there are a lot of people that do not do this. In the fall, late fall, prune it all the way to the ground. And I said, well, why? As it emerges and all of these trunks or stems emerge, they will have flowers. If you have new growth, you have to have new stems. So that's what I would do. I would cut it down every year, down to the ground, which sounds like it's going to ruin it, but it's already absorbed a lot of energy in its roots. And then you won't have this woody looking plant. And then way up here, like we do over in Wyandotte, where there's berries. The other thing, this one really is semi-aggressive, because after I had the one plant in my garden, I noticed that I had plants just popping up all over. Well, I would dig those out and take them over to Wyandotte. So beware of that. Okay. Sweet shrub. Calicanthus iridis. This is a beautiful plant. And what happens, you see two buds there. There hasn't opened up. It's a magenta color. I've never seen plants with that color particularly. Maybe you know some. It's very, very ingenious. And I don't know why nature did this. You don't see them along the branch. They're sporadic around the shrub, which can actually go up to 12 feet high. The other thing that this shrub does, it has those underground suckers that come up. So if you're going to plant this and you want to have a grove of them, you have to have enough area around that these little suckers can come up. So this plant has a spicy odor. Excuse me, we don't say odor around flowers, we say scent. I'm sorry. So what you do is you scratch the bark, because the flowers are only out a couple of days in July. So you scratch that and you can smell that aroma. The other thing that's so neat about this plant, it is a pollinator, but I don't know how a hummingbird would know particularly about that. So it may take the smaller insects, but there is one beetle that really loves this plant. And what he does when it's just getting into the bud stage, he drills them in, sits there, chomp, 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 eats, the flower opens, and he flips off, and he has a full stomach. So, but this plant also, the flower is very unusual. I don't know of any other plant with this behavior. So the bud opens up the first day with a little, closes itself then in the evening. Second day, opens up, and then dies. It's almost a 2-day plant, 2-day flower, but there's a lot on the bush. Now, the other thing I was going to tell you about that, let me think. We have it in a semi-shade because we have a lot of trees over at Wyandotte. And I think that's about all that I have to say with that one. Okay, the next one, I almost took this out of my program. This is the serviceberry. Now you can see on this side how those stems come up. So you have a mass of flowers. The flowers are very flittery. They're small. But when you see this in the springtime, it's absolutely gorgeous. And that's probably blooming, probably now, maybe in April, over at the Norfolk Botanical Garden. Why I like it is because of the berries. When the berry first appears, it's pink. And you can see this, just circles around. Then it gets a little pinker with a little blue in it. Then it turns into this purple. And then it's a purple. Oh, it's a very small, it's about the size of a blueberry. The sweetest berry I have ever tasted that was native. Now, I haven't been down to the tropical, so I'm just saying around here. I would just sit there and eat. This is a bird tree. The birds would fight to get into this because they were such good energy for them. What has happened? Unfortunately, there's called a cedar apple rust. We did not have this in Wyandotte at all because usually it's in with farmlands because it does This fungi does it with apples and cedars. Has to have two hosts. Well, we must not have had two hosts, but the eastern red cedar is a part of lino, and they pop up all over. They're the one host, and this is the second host, and it can jump quite a distance. I would not say don't plant it, because you may not have eastern red cedars around you. So you would have those sweet berries. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk to you is about the sweet bay magnolia, because she told you it was so good for insects, and it is. So here I am. I just bought this house, my husband and I, and I'm going out backyard, all grass. Oh, there were a couple of trees around, and that's all. No flowers whatsoever. That was my little baby to put them in. But I'm walking around, I have this wonderful scent, and I'm smelling, what? No flowers. My next door neighbor, no flowers. This was late spring, early summer. I couldn't imagine. I'm looking around, and I look up, and here's this tree. I call it a tree because it was about 15 feet high, with that luminous cup-shaped flower. Oh my gosh. So I ran over. I looked at the leaves. They're very unusual. I did not know what it was. And I turned the leaves over, and they're a silver gray on the bottom. So I ran into the house. I said, I got to find out what this tree is. Sweet bay magnolia. Of course, Magnolia virginiana. It is a beetle supermarket or dining. All of these beetles get in there, along with leafhoppers, and I think there's another one. And so the scientists wanted to know, why were they really going into that? It was mainly beetles. They found out that the nectar has a very high percentage of protein in it. Now you think of beetles, where are they going to get their protein? They're going to get it from the nectar of the sweet bay magnolia. Now, in the city, we have planted, when I said we, because we have helped the city plant sweet bay magnolias in places that are just decimated, there's no trees. This actually lives either in the water or next to water. So around Lake Whitehurst, which I used to live on, it has sweet bay that were natural trees there. It tolerates wet roots. And that's fantastic, because what tree do you, besides, the other ones? So years ago, in the early settlers came over here, they noticed, that the sweet bay magnolia was along the streams, the lakes, and even maybe a quiet river, not a gushing river. And they really liked that plant. But then they noticed that all these beavers were eating the roots. So they went over and killed them because, for meat. I guess they killed them for, does anybody know, for coats? I think they did. Yeah. So this became known as the beaver tree. So that's how that came through. Now, there was one other thing I was going to tell you. It was about another plant. Oh, let me go back, because this is very interesting too, because I'm asked this all the time. There it is. Okay. I've always wondered, Joe Pye, what in the heck does that mean? Joe Pye? Who's Joe Pye? So in New England, when the settlers first came, I must be touching it. There was an American native that walked down the streets of Boston, and he had these Joe Pye weeds that he had dried out. And what happens when you have the elixir of these leaves, it will induce high levels of fever within the person, which would counteract typhus. Now, we don't know anything about typhus because we have our medicine that takes care of us. But in those days, it was a terrible disease. So when he started singing out, I'm Joe Pye weed, I have your elixir, they would run over there and buy it. So what did they do? They associated the name Joe Pye with our wonderful Joe Pye weed. it's not a weed either. Okay. Now, I think I want to show you one more film and then I'm finished. Ben, do you want to add anything? Okay. We have a lot of giveaway trees here. They're trying to improve the. Okay. I wouldn't do this otherwise. Kate's not here, so she's not going to bite out. You're not supposed to see that. This is what you're supposed to see. I use these. I also use the computer. I just was too lazy last night to put down the, you can figure it out. I like North Carolina when they talk about native plants. This is Armitage. That is fine. I really like Larry Mellencamp much better. But this one is fantastic. It's not, you can only buy it online. You use books. It's no longer in print. And Helen Hamilton and Gustavus Hall wrote this together. Fantastic understanding of native plants, not trees so much, just flowers and grasses. So you can look it up and you can find all about it. It's just great. Okay. And then of course, Bring Nature Home, Douglas. We've seen them several times. Did I overrun? What time is it? Oh, good. I was worried I was going to talk too long. Okay, any questions? Yes.
The cemetery, is it affected by getting juniper, or is it just the eastern red cedar, or anything in the juniper family?
The reason why I told you this is because we have that red cedar in Roanoke, and they're just starting really to grow. We didn't have that many, but now we have a lot. Yes, it was called the farm disease because it actually, apples and other farm plants became infected. So it's just not a Atlantic red cedar that does, it's a co-host.
In my neighborhood, have other types of juniper, and I would like to plant one, but I need to worry about those too, right? They have rocket juniper.
I don't know. They only said the Atlantic, yeah, red cedar. So I have a feeling that's all. Nature is very specific on what it does. It's usually not real, well, it's also general. Yeah, juniperus, yeah, juniperus. But when I looked this up, I didn't see any other. But look it up, do your research, and then you come back and tell me when you come to visit us. So Wednesdays it's going to be getting at 8. And what happened, let me tell you one more thing about Roanoke. It has been revolutionized because when I went there, there was only 2 areas we worked in, and that was the meadow and that woodland. We have opened up, I would say, almost 2 acres more of land that we can start putting things in. So when you come, make sure you bring your gloves because we will probably de-weed the place somewhat. We're not going to be able to do it all. It's impossible. We have to leave something for our children. Thank you very much.
Thursday, we are back in the Garden Auditorium at MBG. We will also have logo wear for sale. So this is going to be at the end of class, not during class, the end of class. So we take cash, check, or credit card. And there'll be hopefully lots of samples there for you guys. You can get a fun sweatshirt like this, which is great to wear for like 5 months out of the year. Don't forget the tree homework. Remember the tree class next Tuesday? You've got that video to watch, right? Also, the plant sales coming up. Look out for Sign Up Genius because that's always a big event and you can always get a lot of hours there. But don't sign up for hours during the class, right? Don't sign up for Thursday morning hours. Lastly, don't forget the info points I sent you guys yesterday. Do those, bring them back hard copy or email, either way, it doesn't matter. So now we're going to take, Gail Green is going to lead us on a tour of the Dune Garden. You can leave your stuff here. Somebody will be here to watch it and come back and get it. So you're not weighed down by that. This should take, I don't know, half hour or so. Okay, so if you want to follow Gail, where did Gail go? There she is. Again, you can leave your stuff here. It's fine. We'll watch it. See you next week, Thursday. See you Thursday.
It's getting to be a pain.